GM, welcome to NFT Talk Photography. I'm your host, Brick Astley. The purpose of this talk show is to highlight one-of-one art on exchange.art and to talk one-of-one NFT art. Today's guest is a multi-chain psychedelic digital collage artist. Welcome the legend, Paper Buddha. We really appreciate your time here to talk about your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, we look forward to it. You're a legend in the space. There may be some new viewers to you. Could you give me a little bit of background? I'm actually just going to go ahead. We'll pull up. I want to go ahead and pull up the here on Exchange. The description: taking LSD, making NFTs, unique one-of-ones on soul pieces in this collection carry utility in the Paper Buddha universe. Join the Discord and enter the temple for more info. We've got the Discord up here, the Twitter, so you can make sure you have a verified Paper Buddha. Welcome. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got started as Paper Buddha? How did Paper Buddha come to be?
Yeah, man, that's a deep question. I grew up on the West Coast in psychedelic culture and Buddhism. And because of that, my nickname was always Buddha growing up. And all the white kids around town would just call me Buddha. And, and then I kind of left that persona behind as I became an adult. And then I revisited that, with creating a persona for my art. And yeah, I've been a lifelong practitioner, going on 30 years as a Zen Buddhist, Westerner, so as a lay practitioner. And yeah, it's been quite a journey. And along the way, I was a drug dealer and was, came up very rough and had to pull myself out of kind of the throes of poverty and into a different life. Buddhism helped a lot with that. Psychedelics helped a lot with that. And during the original wave of COVID, I think a lot shifted in Web3, and I was already pretty hip to the blockchain, coming at it from the sovereign individual side and being a Bitcoiner. Got a couple of Silk Road bags laying around. So it's, I wasn't unfamiliar with the blockchain at all. And I saw art starting to represent tokens. And that got me really interested, as somebody that was trying to kind of reinvent myself and leave, revisiting the drug dealer thing. I worked my way up through all of that into the regulated cannabis space and became an executive, had built a lot of successful businesses in that space and was completely done with that life. And so I was looking to reinvent myself, saw what was happening in Web3 and really started to just make art, man. Just started throwing together collages. I was a DJ and a graffiti artist back in the day, when I was a kid. And so remix culture and that made a lot of sense to me. And that was collage. Collage in its essence is remix culture. And that's exactly what I'm doing with the art. I'm taking traditional Buddhist tanka and from all over the world, not just Tibetan, but also Japanese, Chinese, a lot of the Indo-Asian Buddhist traditions as well, Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, all those places. My family is in Indonesia, so the art is me creating a melting pot of Buddhist art. Sometimes you'll see me use a Tibetan tanka with Japanese elements behind it. And, the shadows in all of my work is inspired from Indonesian shadow puppet work. So there's this cultural fusion going on. And then I remixed that with very early 1920s and earlier sci-fi illustrations from how we thought the future would be, retrofuturism. And so combining those elements, I'm retelling a lot of these stories and trying to create a new tradition in cyberspace around Buddhist art.
I think it's fantastic what you're doing here, doing the remix culture and sharing all these different nuances within Buddhism. Because I didn't know that there was, a different symbolism with Japanese Buddhism versus Tibetan Buddhism versus Indonesian Buddhism, and so I wouldn't have known that had you not told me. So that's awesome to know the history behind it, and to know that it's this nice melting pot. Is there a reason why you went with like the retro futurism? Does it call to you? Tell me a little more on that.
Yeah, I've always been a sci-fi nerd. So, a little more about my background. I grew up in like jails and institutions and stuff. So I had a lot of time to read. And the things that I chose to read were either sci-fi or they were, Buddhist literature. Because you're sitting there with nothing to do, you better learn how to meditate, otherwise you're going to go crazy. And so, as a very young man, I learned that, and then was always fascinated with really great sci-fi, really shitty sci-fi. It didn't matter. I would read like all of it, and so I was very into like William Gibson and Aldous Huxley and a lot of those kind of uh, early sci-fi kind of writers, and so was very drawn to all of that stuff. And a lot of the places that I stayed had old ass books that nobody was trying to read anymore. And it was usually like those really cheesy pulp comics and things like that. So when I created the persona Paper Buddha, there's a lot of meaning in those two words. And one of the meanings of paper is referring to the pulp covers that I use. And they're all, really old, kind of over the top stories. And sometimes it's a little too risky for modern times. And there's like some imagery that there's no way that I could get away with using because they were wild, in the 1910s with their stupid beliefs. Um, so there's a lot of editing, a lot of like, um, a lot of what doesn't make it is just as important as what does. But yeah, so there was always this sci-fi element, and when I was young and I was reading all this Buddhist scripture and Buddhist literature and history and really kind of diving into it, I always had this. My imagination was like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? But it was like the Buddha Cinematic Universe where all these different deities and all these different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they're all their own little superheroes, and I always had them in my mind, ripped into the cosmos and not really here on this planet. And so that's always what I'm trying to convey, as the grandeur of the cosmic theater. I'm always trying to express that through the work.
I can definitely feel the cosmic theater. It almost feels like the shadows are also theatric and like behind like some of the structures. That adds definitely the elements there into the theater. That's based off of the Tibetan theater you were saying?
Indonesian, yeah,
Indonesian. I
in
apologize.
Bali specifically, they have these really cool leather puppets. They're like almost like marionettes, and they tell the story on a white sheet that's held up, and the shadows are cast onto the white sheet, and you can sit on either side of the sheet and see the story. So that was how they used to do theater. And so depending on the piece, like this one that we have up doesn't have a lot of my really crazy shadow work. Depending on how much LSD I take when I make these things, sometimes the shadows are super intense. When you look at my work, I highly recommend that you turn the brightness all the way up, and all of a sudden you're going to see a whole new scene of shadows behind things. So there's a, I know what the setting is out of the box for a lot of devices, and they like do this auto dim thing. And so I very intentionally try to make it so that you really don't notice the shadows until you crank up the brightness, and then it's all you notice.
That's pretty interesting that you accommodate it towards, or like you've noticed that that different devices have that auto dim. But I want to touch on, can you touch on like your creative process? Like how do you go about creating a paper Buddha? Um, Tell me a little bit more about your creative process. It's atypical, I guess you could say, from a creative standpoint. But
Yeah, so I kind of it depends nowadays because I have so much stuff going on. But I think if we boiled it down to our essence, I sit with the concept of a piece for a second. I kind of meditate on it and go, all right, what's the purpose of this piece? What collection's it in? What does that mean artistically? Because, you know, is it a widescreen? Is it vertical? Is it a square? Is it part of a PFP project that I'm doing? Is it a golden paper Buddha, which is the highest utility? You know, these things all kind of play into it. And then I think about the story that I want to tell at the moment. I usually tie it into what's going on in the world. In my world specifically, that means crypto and NFT, you know, and things gently in the periphery there, you know, but there, a lot of these are tied into a moment. If you read the descriptions, if you look at past works, um, each mint is a milestone and a marker for me. And I'm telling that story through, you know, through the descriptions of all of the work. And so, you know, I try to place myself in the time and place where I'm at doing the thing. You know, what piece is it? When is it? What's happening? That will kind of inform the story, and then I'll sit on it for a minute. And then, you know, I'll start going through my stock. I have hard drives full of stock that is, you know, old photography of Tonka or old photography of pulp comics, and I start kind of going through it, and I have it all sorted by color. So I can go through it and I can pull all the blue pieces from sci-fi and then pull like yellow Buddha and know that yellow and blue will go together, you know, and I can really start working on it from there. So I do a lot of the color matching. And what I'm doing is usually setting up, you know, 5 to 10 of these at a shot. And then I take a bunch of LSD and sit there and really start putting everything together. So the concepts start to come together. Each piece starts to come together in its own way. Having my workflow open with a bunch of different things at once allows me to sort through my stock material and go, man, I really like this picture, but blue's not the vibe. So I'm gonna take the picture and put it over here. And then I'll keep searching for the vibe with this Buddha. And then while I'm doing that, a Buddha will come up and I'll be like, that actually fits with that picture that I really wanted to use. So I can kind of do that across the board 5, 10 times. Really do the high level, like conceptual stuff while I'm tripping. And then usually, you know, this is a multi-day process. So usually I'll become a little bit more lucid, and then I can do the detail work. I have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and I have everything set up as if it were a traditional collage space, with a full-blown table mat and a standing table that's angled, and, you know, all my monitors up, and I'm able to get into a workflow just like a traditional collage artist, with an X-Acto knife and a cutting pad. But I'm doing that on my iPad. And so I go through all those fine cuts, and I go through kind of a layer braiding is what I call it. You know, I'll take 5 layers and create 50 layers out of that and start braiding them all together front to back and folding them in. And it really messes with people's perception of how many images were used to make that one image. You know, again, kind of shattering perceptions, shattering realities. That's the purpose of the art, right? So yeah, from there, you know, that's usually going through. I'll go through and do one piece from that stage of cutting, and then braiding, and then doing my shadow work. So by the time I'm braiding it, I usually take a couple more hits. It's usually a couple days later. And then I start doing the shadow work. And really, depending on what kind of trip I'm having, determines the shadow work. So if you were to look at, say, the Paper Buddha Editions collection, the OpenSea, your third tab.
Got the
almost there. You're almost there. The third tab. So you're on Exchange. Yep.
Yeah, there's this banner that just comes down for Zoom sometimes when I go up to the top, unfortunately.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Gotta wait for it to go. There we go.
Yeah, so if we were to scroll down here, you can see, let me just pull one up. Keep going. You're gonna have to go all the way down if you're sorted by price. It's called the Throne. Do you see that one? It might be the one right above you.
I can look for it. The Throne up here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There it is. So if you were to look at this, when I was making this, so this is an airdrop for a temple run. So a temple run is collecting 4 drops in a row, and then you get airdropped the 5th one, and it has utility. The 5th one is a widescreen mashup of the 4 drops. And so in this one of the pieces, you can see that there's like these little robot guys right underneath that Buddha. But then you can see how giant their shadows are behind it, and they're overpowering everything else. So that was a pretty strong trip right there.
Yeah.
But so that's the difference in the shadow work. If you see it going crazy like that, now you know what happened. You know, if you know, you know. But me and Lucy did our thing, and there she is on the shadows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where if you look at something like the golden, because it took me so long to do that golden, there was never really a solid trip and doing like the shadow work in the back that's that dramatic. You know, there's shadow work that's detailed, that's very dramatic on this, but it's not the same, because this took weeks to do, whereas the other one, you know, didn't take weeks. So I had 2 nice peaks, one at the beginning to create it, one at the end to do the shadows. And because I'm, you know, heavy on the psychedelics, sometimes when I'm doing a piece that's 2 or 3 weeks into it, I never really get those high peaks or valleys. It's just a consistent kind of riding the veil through.
No, these are tight. No, yeah, it totally makes sense. Do you have like a set like amount like that you can take, like amount of hits, like you know that you'll reach this certain amount? Like, is there after a while you kind of get to know your dosage?
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah, I know exactly like how much to take to get to where I want to be. And then, you know, I'm pretty familiar with the exponential tolerance build that you get. You know, so on day 1, you might have to take 1 hit. On day 2, you would have to take 4 in order to feel exactly like you did with that 1. And the following day would be 8 and then 16. And it's just like this, it's probably even faster than that to ramp up. You know, on the 3rd day, I could probably hit like a 10 strip without thinking about it. I could hit 10 hits, no problem, by the 3rd day in a row. You know, and that's just the nature of the substance. It's how it works for everybody.
Absolutely. And no, it's, do you feel compelled on certain ones to amp up the dosage, like for like
Yeah,
the
totally.
Throne versus like the Golden?
Yeah, definitely. You know, the ones that are a little shorter in development time, those ones I like to really spike it hard. Where like something like this golden piece, because it's so high end, because of the utility, I took a long time with it. And there's not just LSD in there. There's some mushrooms in there. There's some other, you know, some other nice psychedelics as well. And that's a more of an experience. You know, that lasted. I started that while we were on the road in Denver. You know, and so there was quite a bit of time taken with it. Not only there in Denver, but then when I got back to the studio in Michigan, you know, and just really putting in a lot of time spread out. So the experience is a lot different. When I'm in the studio, the things that I'm doing take 2 or 3 days, which is great. I trip on day one, I do the thing, and then I go on about my daily life. And then as each one of these pieces approaches finality, I can take kind of a celebratory dose and do the shadow work and really get into it.
This is tight. Congratulations on your all-time high 77 soul for this one, on Exchange Art. Can you tell me about that auction? How that auction? It's a fantastic auction, but tell me about your thoughts going into it, and do you know? And we know who purchased it.
Yeah, Papa Mumu purchased it, and it was, the golden paper Buddhas are very special in the collection. There's only 12 that will ever be made. This was the sixth one, so the halfway mark, and they're across all chains. So I've got, by the end of the year, we'll have 2 on Tez, 2 on Sol, and then the rest of them live on Ethereum for now. And over the 12, I will spread them evenly across the chains. But they are the pinnacle of utility in the PB universe. So holding a golden paper Buddha means that you not only get like the same benefits as a paper holder, which means I cover your food, your stay, and your vices at every NFT event that I go to, which is like every 30 to 60 days I'm somewhere. We did, what did we do? New York, Miami, Boston, Philly, Denver, and now we're back out to Miami in April, back out to New York in June. A couple other things coming up in the works as well. But I cover their lodging. They stay with me in the temple wherever we're at. And like fine dining, the best weed you can smoke, VIP access to things, and me and the crew. So that's like for a paper holder. And then for the golden paper Buddha holders, they get that plus we're shooting for 2 events per year that are just me and them. We're going to be going to Formula One in Austin in October. Totally VIP package, behind the scenes, 5-star dining while we're there, calling on a lot of favors from the old world, to make sure that the parties are lined up and that we're going to have a great time and that it's a very elevated, luxurious experience. I want those holders to feel that and to enjoy that. And then on the flip side of that token, we're planning a camp out, completely like disconnecting from technology and not having the luxurious shit and just having a mastermind group where we're camping, me and the golden holders. So that's the 2 sides of the coin, trying to kind of provide balance to the holders there, with a ton of utility. So that's the backstory of why these golden pieces close a lot higher than everything else. With that said, there's a lot of courting bidders. There's a lot of, hey, we're going to be having a golden paper Buddha auction in 2 weeks, and this is what that means. Here's some of the pictures of past events. Your name came up as somebody that might be interested in bidding. So I wanted to give you the lowdown. I reach out to them in the DM, invite them into the Discord. That's what we call the temple, inviting them into the Discord, and really high touch. I just want to make sure that you understand the story and the utility behind these golden pieces before you come into an auction, because I don't want you to be disappointed coming in thinking like, oh, I'm going to be able to close this at 10 sol, 20 sol, and then all of a sudden your hopes and dreams are crushed immediately and you're like, what happened? It's like, well, dude, there's people on the back end that have been following the story since day one. They know the utility of a golden piece, and so that's why they get real spicy.
Ooh, we love the golden paper Buddhas. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there one of these days to compete up there. That's 77 souls. Fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's a beautiful closeout.
Thank you.
So they can pick up your work. You're not only on Exchange Art, you're multi-chain. You've got Ethereum, the paper contract. You've also got the paper Buddha editions that you can go on here, as well as Tezos. You have quite the collection here. And can you tell me a little bit about the Paper Buddha buddies here on Tezos?
Yeah, so that's our punk rock. Like I prefer to be anti-establishment and punk rock, and like the way we do our auctions is a 2-hour auction. They happen from 7 p.m. Eastern till 9 p.m. Eastern when we do them, and the reserve is always 7.77 TES, which is about 20 or 30 US dollars depending on the day. So really nice low reserve. But this is my version of a PFP project. Each one of these are handmade by me. No generative, nothing. The only thing we're generating is hype, and each one of these has a ton of cyberspace utility. So, just like the paper holders and the golden paper Buddhas have all this real life utility, plus they get airdropped every month. The Paper Buddha Buddies collection is the key to kind of being part of the Temple Squad, right? I'm doing a lot of things cross chain with these buddies. They're the key to cyberspace. If you want to get in on the Temple metaverse stuff that we're doing on Ethereum, you're going to need to hold a one-on-one Paper Buddha buddy. And there's open editions in the collection. There's multi-editions in the collection. And we do evolution events, and that allows people to evolve their buddies. So if you take a look at like this second or the third one, whichever one you want to look at there up to the top. Yeah, either one of those with the clouds. So this is 55. So this one is for Proteon. So Proteon is one of our metaverse architects on the team. Just recently, actually joined our team. Before he joined our team, he was a collector of mine and had a bunch of Paper Buddha Buddy open editions. And we ran this evolution event where he was able to choose the elements of his Paper Buddha buddies, whether they were, in his case, earth, wind, and fire. And then he sent them off to sacrifice to the burn wallet. And we burned them all down so that he could create a one of one out of his open editions, with a very specific mix of what he chose. So we have some lore around the Paper Buddha buddies. There's 4 different clans. There's earth, there's air, there's water, and fire. And sometimes they split off into teams to do activities. We have scavenger hunts planned per clan. And having something like this, where he's got a mix of the different clans, allows him to participate in a mix of different events. So very strategically, he was able to create a one-of-one out of his open editions. So when you see the open editions, think, okay, we're going to do an evolution event with that. Or it was a really limited, like the next one over, if you look at that one, that was actually a community evolution. So some people didn't feel like burning 15 Paper Buddhas for a one-on-one. Fair play. Not this one, but the other one on the other side. This is the auction that's happening tonight, the one you were just looking at. But yeah, this one right here. You'll see that it's a multi-edition, but the temple was able to, as a community, send into the burn wallet and affect the mix of how much earth, how much water, how much fire was in this one. And those that participated and burned the right amount were able to get a smaller multi-edition drop than our open edition. So, little bit of alpha, maybe hold on to that one if you want to do a really wild Evo on the last Evo event that we do. So we're going to do another evolution event, but doing all these crazy, clever mechanics is the thing we're able to do on Tezos. It's prohibitive on Ethereum with the gas. There's no way that I could mint 10,000 editions of something, leave it up for 24 hours, and then burn whatever doesn't sell. I can't do that on Ethereum. You're crazy.
It's expensive.
And Solana, we're just not there with the editions yet, right? But we will get there.
It'll be very exciting when we do.
Yeah, I'm so pumped and hyped on that. I can't even believe. Oh yeah.
So if they want to follow you for updates, they can find you on the Twitter here at Paper Buddha, and that has the Discord link, so you can join the temple, get all the 411 on the temple runs, the evolution events, and the cross-train drops?
Yep. And I would say, you know, I'm constantly shadow banned on Twitter. They don't really like me. So you might not hear my message loud and clear on Twitter. Join our Discord. You know, our Discord is where it's all happening. It's live. Um, you know, as I'm in the studio, I have Discord pulled up on my second monitor, man. So you can jump in, anybody could jump in there into Temple Chat and tag me and be like, "What's up, man? What are you doing?" I'll be like, "Oh, I'm hanging out and I'm doing art. What are you doing?" You know? So very accessible through Discord.
There we are. We're in the Discord. We're in the temple now. Um,
We're in the temple now, baby.
well, Paper Buddha, I really appreciate your time coming in, talking about your work, talking about your process, and talking about the utility as well as the evolution events. It seems like you've really put a lot of thought into the mechanics, the tokenomics, as well as the utility behind it. I think you're definitely, reinventing the game, and definitely a sterling example of how to do it in the NFT space. Um, I really appreciate your time again, being on here to talk about your work.
It's my pleasure, man. And you know, it's not just me; it's a team. I have an amazing team of people. I stopped being just a one person show a while ago, and so now you know there's people that are helping with everything from marketing and running the Instagram and TikTok stuff to helping with Discord and getting the website going, and a lot's going on the back end. You know, so it's not just me. It takes a whole village, and I'm the idiot. So
I think that's an important note. I think that's really important that you bring that up, like, especially maybe for some of the newer artists coming into the space. Like, you've got a fantastic team that helps communicate your message and helps kind of just keep everything together. So that's really amazing that you highlight your team there. Um, I know some of them that work in the team. They're a fantastic group. Definitely a well-rounded bunch. Um,
yeah, man. And if I could leave a new artist with anything, it's don't compare yourself to others because you don't know what's happening in the back. Like if you were to compare yourself to where I'm at now, and you're just on starting outward appearances, you wouldn't know I have a huge team and I have all this stuff going on. You know, and just comparing ourselves to each other is a setup for misery. You know, and like we're all on this path at different stages, and so I feel a responsibility to look behind me on the path and say, here's how I got here, like let's go. And then I'm looking at the guys ahead of the path and the gals ahead of me on the path, and I'm saying, hey, what are y'all doing? And they're like, oh, come on, bro, this is what we're doing. So it's a beautiful, like, virtuous cycle that we're trying to keep up here. Just remember not to compare yourself at where you're at on the trail versus where someone else on the trail.
Words of wisdom from the sage himself, Paper Buddha. Can't thank you again enough. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to having more conversations in the future and on in the Twitter spaces.
Love you, man. Thank you for the time, buddy.
WGM, always GM.